What if I told you that this dunya is a simulation of sorts? Like the movie The Matrix or the 13th Floor, The Truman Show? Allah mentions this implicitly in the Quran. And recent scientific discoveries seems to support this claim. Sounds too far-fetched? Hear me out.
Da 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 da.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allah mentions in several places in the Quran that this temporary world, dunya, is merely an illusion. All this while I thought was purely metaphorical. But what if it's not just metaphorical and it's beyond that? For example, in Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 64, Allah refers to this life in dunya as a mere play and amusement. And if only we humans knew of this truth. Both plays and amusements are forms of distraction or entertainment that takes your focus off from the real thing that truly matters. Lahun, play, refers to a passive, aimless activity where the work of entertaining, distracting is done onto you without you having to do anything. While la'ibun, amusement, refers to active activity whereby the work of distraction or entertaining is done by you, like sports or fights or video games. Lahun keeps us busy, wasting time away on superficial acts. Just like in theatrical plays, everyone assumes a role each. When the play finishes, we get out of our costumes and we go back to our real life, not realizing that opportunities have passed us by while we were busy playing our fake parts. La'ibun, on the other hand, are like never-ending competitions, championships, on and off obstacles. We take the winning or losing in a competition so seriously while forgetting there is an important life outside of the ring, court, arena, field, etc. Almost like implying that this dunya is sort of like a virtual reality, a metaverse where everyone assumes a temporary role in a make-believe universe, chasing never-ending material goals one after another. But wait, it gets more interesting. We all know that light is the reason we can see things. For example, you walk into pitch dark black room, you can't see a thing until you switch on the light. And during daytime, we have abundant sunlight to allow us to see things. But light, which is a wave made out of tiny particles called photons, in itself is a peculiar thing that have scientists all baffled, still trying to figure out all of its behaviors. But first, let's check out this video.
If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now, there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
I don't know about you guys, but me, when I first learned about this observer effect, I was mind blown, flabbergasted, a truly jaw-dropping moment. It's as if the particles have consciousness, that they collapse into a definite matter, a tangible form, when being observed. However, when they are not observed, they roam about freely in waves of probabilities. In other words, it is our senses, our perceptions that gives matter its tangible form. If we don't look at it, it simply doesn't exist as something we can touch or feel. Dr. Donald Hoffman, a popular science author and a cognitive scientist, puts forth a bold claim saying that each and every one of us is living in our own respective headsets. Unlike Meta's or PlayStation's headset, our headsets are far more sophisticated, a built-in headset, which is our brain, along with our sensory system. Dr. Hoffman says that whatever we perceive in this universe is merely a user interface. Dr. Hoffman gives an analogy of our computer desktop. For example, the yellow folder icon on our desktop. Is it really a yellow folder in reality? No. The actual files and folders are in binary codes, hidden away from the sights of users. Link in the comment section below if you want to understand better how he translates this perceived reality of our universe. And string theory suggests our universe could be a hologram. Much like a 3D hologram emerges from the information encoded on a 2D surface, our universe's 4D space-time could be a holographic projection of a lower dimensional reality. Weighing question I had in mind was, but how can matter, for example, take this piece of fabric, can be simply an illusion? Everyone else sees it, right? Everyone else feels it, sees it, and touches it just as I do see, feel, and touch it. So it can't be simply a product of my imagination, right? I'm sure you guys have the same question. Let's listen to how Dr. Hoffman explains this.
Well, it does, but I think a good analogy here that might help clarify the issue is so in, say, Grand Theft Auto, right? I look over, I'm playing with somebody who's, in Canada, and somebody else is in Europe, and someone else is in China. We're all playing a remote version of it, virtual reality. And I look over and I see a red Porsche to my right. And so I say, is there a red Porsche on my right? And the guy in China says, oh, yeah, I see a red Porsche. And the guy in Canada agrees, and the guy in Europe agrees as well. So, of course, each of them is rendering their own red Porsche. So there is some reality that's coordinating all of these perceptions, right? So the guy in Canada didn't see a red Porsche until he looked. But when he looked, there was this whole world, of circuits and software that you don't see. There's some supercomputer that's coordinating the whole thing.
How's it coordinating?
In that particular metaphor, right, there's a supercomputer that's taking the inputs from, like, your headset. What direction are you looking with your headset? Maybe you've got a bodysuit, so it's looking at your arm movements and so forth, and it's feeding all that into a supercomputer, where it's got a model of the game. And in that model, there's some red Porsche model. Of course, there's no red Porsche in the computer. And it knows then how to coordinate and send the photons to your headset in Canada, and my headset in Irvine, and someone else's headset in China, so that we have this notion of a persistent reality of a Porsche, even though individually, for each one of us, local realism is false. The Porsche doesn't even exist until I render it. And there's no red Porsche inside the supercomputer. So that's sort of the idea, is that space-time is just a headset, and there's behind space-time, there's going to be an incredibly complicated realm to explore that's at least as complicated, more complicated as, like, the supercomputer is to my little headset. The headset is sophisticated, it's beautiful technology, but the supercomputer is, really, really powerful thing. And the same thing will be true of space-time. It's just our headset, but if we look beyond that headset, we're going to, be finding a realm that's far more complicated.
It is a mind-boggling concept to digest, yes, but a very possible one, because we are already living in the age of virtual reality technology. And if we are really living in this hyper-sophisticated simulation of sorts, then it begs the question, just who is the one that coordinating the supercomputer behind it all? The designer, the brilliant programmer, designer, creator that's orchestrating this massive virtual universe. And a brilliant creator at that, to say the least. Wallahu alam. But why are you